Hi everyone, and welcome back to my channel. It's Allison with the Everyday Scrapbooker, and today I wanted to share with you a little bit of a new technique and a scrapbook layout process as well. The layout that I'm creating today, I wanted to create a really soft and subtle background, and truth be told, as I was lying in bed trying to sleep a couple nights ago before I made this layout, I decided that I wanted to try heat embossing on a stencil sheet, which I've done in the past, but what I wanted to do that was different was color it in with my Spectrum Noir Tri-Blend alcohol markers, and I wanted to see first of all if it would work, and then if it didn't work, the plan was to use watercolors instead. So the first step in this new technique that I was just trying out and experimenting with in my craft room was to stamp the floral image on Close to My Heart stencil sheets. I used white pigment-based ink, stamped the image in that onto the stencil sheet, and then I followed it up with white embossing powder. You can already see two other images that I had stamped and colored in. I began first of all by coloring in the side that the heat embossing is on. I don't recommend doing that. I don't like the way it looked. If you wanted to go in and do some shading on it, you could see each of the stroke marks from the alcohol pens, and it just didn't really fit the image in my head that I had for the look that I was going for. So that's the purple one. The blue one that you see next to it, I decided to flip the stencil sheet over like you see me just doing right now, and I colored the back side of the image instead of the side that the embossing is actually on. And it looked so much better, and I'm so happy to report that the alcohol markers worked beautifully on the stencil sheets. You do need to give it a little bit of time to dry. It doesn't take all that much time actually, which is a bonus as well. So you don't want to touch it right away because you will get a little bit of ink on your skin if you do touch it, but give it just a few minutes to dry and then you are free to cut it out. This particular stamp set that I used is an older one from Close to My Heart, so I've had it in my stash for a while, but it does have a coordinating thin cut set that goes with it. So cutting it out is really quick and simple. And I think later on in this video, I do actually show you one of the flowers that I cut out using the thin cuts. We'll have to see. I can't really remember. My memory is a bit fuzzy. You'll have to pardon my head in the picture again. This might be a common theme if I keep coloring in my videos. So I'm sorry, you'll have to pardon that. Coloring on the back side of the stencil sheet is really nice because the embossing doesn't get in the way of your coloring. You can color freely without having to worry about covering up the white spots from the heat embossing. And also, if you were coloring on the flip side with the side that has the heat embossing on it, you would be worried about covering up the white spots from the heat embossing. I did that in the very first image, which also kind of irritated me a bit as well because I really wanted the white spots to be dominant and sort of the focal point, and so flipping it over was really the best way to achieve the look that I was going for. I wanted to stick with the blues and purples and some yellows in this layout as well. The layout is about one of my fur babies. Her name is Ava. She's the only kitty in the house and she's orange, and so I was trying to pick colors that would complement her coloring. The picture that I used in the layout is a color picture as well, and I didn't want anything that would really compete with the bold color that she is as well. So I thought the blues and purples, mostly the blues and the yellows would complement her oranges the best, and then the purple was just a nice pop of a different color sort of is what I was thinking when I was doing the coloring. Going back to the heat embossing with stencil sheets is really quite nice. The paper doesn't buckle all that much. It doesn't warp. I mean, it does a little bit, but it's not so much that you really have to worry about it. If it does bother you and you plan on using the entire sheet as is without cutting it up, you can put it between books or put heavy things on top of it just to help flatten it out a little bit more. But because I wasn't using the entire sheet and was going to be cutting it out, I wasn't too terribly concerned about the warping and the buckling. So here I am showing you a little bit of the cutting. I use a Cuttle Bug to do all my cutting with, and I like using a little bit of washi tape to hold the thin cut in place while I'm doing the cutting. It just ensures that the die doesn't slip around and move around while you're doing your cutting. I also held the image up against some white cardstock just to kind of show you how the image would look against paper, and it's really so beautiful and soft and pretty. Here I'm just showing you all of the elements that I have cut for the layout. I've got a couple flowers there. I cut the title with my Cricut. I cut it a couple of times because I wanted a couple different colors in there, so I'm using white and pebble cardstock, and then the overlay in the background was also cut with my Cricut as well. All I'm doing right now is just gluing it to, well, adding glue to the back of it so I can glue it to my layout base. All of the products that I use in this video will be included in the description box down at the bottom of the video. And I will have links to my Close to My Heart website as well, so you can find any of these products there. I gotta let you know, when you cut your stencil sheet with your die cutting machine, whether you have a Big Shot or a Cuttle Bug or something different, don't panic when you start hearing crunching and shattering sounds coming from your die cutting machine as you are rolling it through the machine. I had a near breakdown when I started hearing that noise when I did the first cut, and then realized it was just the die cutting through the stencil sheet that was making that sound. I didn't actually break anything. So to avoid you going through the same panic attack that I almost had, if you try this, just keep in mind that you are going to hear some crunching noises, and it's nothing to worry about. The material stencil sheets are made from is different than your typical paper. I don't really know how to describe the material that it's made from. It's a lot like wax paper, but a lot thicker than it. So expect to find working with it just a little bit different than your typical paper is. Right now I'm just arranging the flowers around the page, around my pictures mostly. I did cut a few different floral and leaf images from this stamp set. I followed the same process for all of those pieces, and then colored them in as well. But I'm just arranging them in a way that feels the best to me. The very first image that I showed you that was predominantly purple and I had colored on the front side, the side with the embossing, is actually included in this layout as well. Originally I wasn't going to use it, but then I decided, well, I put the effort into stamping and coloring it, I may as well use it. So I just kind of tucked it in underneath the photos so that it's still kind of peeking out, but the whole image most of the image is hidden. I learned very quickly as well too, as I was adhering the flowers to my layout, stencil sheets and liquid glass don't play well nice together. So keep that in mind. After I got all the flowers adhered to the layout and I started taking pictures for still shots, I kind of decided that I still wasn't really happy with the layout, and I actually took the day to think about it a little bit more. My husband happened to be home that day as well. So we were out and about running around doing different things. And I got home and I said to him, I figured out what it is that I'm not happy with in this layout. So I took all the flowers off of the layout and layered them on white cardstock and glued the flowers to that before adhering them back down onto the layout. But this was done way after the video had been recorded, and I started taking pictures of the layouts for my Facebook page and for the video here too. So it's going to look a little bit different in the very end than it does right now. I would really recommend probably layering some paper behind your images if you try this technique out. It makes the images pop a little bit better, and the white becomes whiter, and the portions of it that you colored in kind of anchors it, I think is how I would explain it. It just makes it pop a little bit more. When I took the flowers off, ink was left behind on my layout. The alcohol markers and the liquid glass, I guess, reacted with each other, and it left the ink behind on my layout as well. So I had another unique challenge when I was putting my flowers back on after I had matted them on white cardstock to make sure I covered up all the little dots from where the liquid glass had been. So these ugly little dots weren't peeking out either. I'm still working on arranging everything, putting flowers around the page and the leaves as well. Just trying to play with what feels the best. I layered the title next to the orange flower down at the bottom between both pictures. I thought that looked really great. And I really wanted to bring some more of the white into my layout as well. So I cut Relax a second time from White Daisy cardstock and then matted it over top of the Pebble cardstock. I chose Pebble and white because I thought they were perfect for conveying the soft message that I wanted to, that I was going for. And then it also helped support the softness of the flowers that I colored and cut from stencil sheets as well. This part in my crafting process is probably what takes me the absolute longest. I'm such an indecisive person when it comes to embellishing a page. I move things around and pick them up quite often through the creative process. Really, I'm afraid to commit to anything until I'm absolutely certain it works or I absolutely love it. It became apparent very quickly when I was trying to glue these stencil sheet pieces to my layout that the liquid glass was not ideal for adhering in this case. It really didn't want to stick to the cardstock very well. It didn't stick to the pictures very well. I found things slid around as I was trying to put them down, or they just literally wouldn't stick. So you can see there that I pulled the flower off and used both my hands to try and press down the leaves that I was gluing and hold it for a little bit, hoping that the bond would take place and it would stay put. But it really didn't. And I was afraid actually when I finished the layout, when I brought it upstairs to take pictures of, my craft room is down in our basement, which is why it always looks so dark in my videos. I don't have a lot of light down there. And there's a lot more light upstairs. So I was afraid when I brought my layout upstairs and started handling a little bit more, all the pieces would just fall off because they weren't really glued all that well. Now, I could have used regular tape adhesive as well. The thought did cross my mind while I was crafting, but I was afraid that you would be able to see it from behind the image. I didn't want any glue or adhesive to be visible, so I was very conscious about what kind of glue I was using as I was gluing so that nothing unwanted would be visible in my layout. looking back, maybe I should have just used my tape runner instead to adhere the flowers, but I was stuck on that liquid glass. It is, for most projects, the perfect glue for adhering. Just in this case, it wasn't meant to be. You can see that I'm playing around with different things in my craft room to set on top of my images after I glued them, because I was really trying to make that bond, make a connection between the paper and the liquid glass. And in the end, it didn't come about. That's part of the beauty of crafting. It's trial and error when you're trying something new, figuring out what works, what doesn't work. And when you try it again, you were that much smarter going into it. So I took a break from gluing my flowers and moved on just to the title. I adhered it with some foam squares just to add some depth and height to the layout. And then the white portion of it is just going to be glued with liquid glass, just so that that bond is permanent and that title won't go anywhere. I added the foam squares to the thickest portions of the title so that corners of it and pieces of it aren't obviously showing through when you turn it over and adhere it to the layout base. There's a lot of different places that you can get foam squares from. Close to My Heart carries them. You can get them from Michael's, your local scrapbook store, whichever is the closest to you, and whatever fits your preference the best. I personally like the ones from Michael's, so that's where I grab mine from. But you may find that you like getting them from somewhere different. I'm still playing with finding things in my craft room to put on top of my floral images that I cut out and I'm trying to glue. Now I've moved on to ink pads. I put them down because I thought maybe they would be heavier weight-wise than the embossing powder and re-inker that I had on them earlier. And I put them on top because I'm still hoping that it will encourage the bond between my paper and the liquid glass. So that's what the ink pads are about. I thought that adding some splatter to the layout would look really great. I wanted to grunge it up just a little bit. So I grabbed my black shimmer brush and primed it by squeezing it just a little bit to get some ink down into the brush. And then I used my finger to tap it to apply the black ink to the layout. The really nice thing about the shimmer brush is even though it added some splatter, there's a little bit of sparkle to it as well, which makes it look really, really nice in the end. And I like the contrast between the black and then the softness of the rest of the colors. So I went through my stash and pulled out some stickers from one of Close to My Heart's past collections, and really wanted to use some of the word stickers that were part of the one collection to add to my layout. So I used one that says Lullaby. That would be from the Sweet Girl collection. And then the other one, I think it says the best place, or this is the best place, or something along those lines, came from another collection, which I think it was Happy Heart. The name of it escapes me right now, but it came from a completely different collection. Both collections are retired from Close to My Heart right now. Not right now, but they are retired from Close to My Heart as well. So they are not available anymore. And you can see that I'm just moving them around the page, trying to find the best place that they're going to live. And obviously I wanted to choose colors that would work the best with my color scheme. So there's the teal, and the little Lullaby one is gray. Here's a great little tip. Use your scissors to help you pick up things like I just did in my layout if you're not able to pick them up with your fingers. I picked this up at some point in my crafting and have never stopped using them. They are a handy tool to have when you can't pick things up. Tweezers is another great one as well. Probably my most favorite way to add the date to any of my layouts is by using a date stamp. I have 2 date stamps in my stash, but I'm using this pink one because I think it's more current than the other one is. I think current as in the year, the dates on it goes up to like 2020 or something like that. So I have a little bit of time. The other one that's in my stash is older and I don't think I have the right years on it to use anymore. So I decide to stamp it on the layout base using black ink. But after I got it stamped, I decided I wasn't really crazy about it because the lines from the die cut overlay that I had put in the background didn't make it look really nice. So I took some scrap white daisy cardstock, stamped it on that, trimmed it out, and then dovetailed the ends. You'll see me do it here right away to make a banner. And all you really do is make a cut in the center of the end and then cut inwards from the outer points to make your pennant or banner. And I'm just pulling out the pieces that I cut there and then layered it over top to hide the stamping that in the place that I had originally stamped on. Well, that about sums up today's layout. Thank you so much for joining me today, and I hope you enjoyed the new technique and process video that I shared with you today. If you'd like to see more videos like this, please make sure you hit like and subscribe and click on that little bell so you don't miss anything from me. Thanks for joining me, and I will see you again really soon. Bye, guys.